It's very nice Thursday afternoon, a Thursday of Cat Grizz, which doesn't get much better than that. If you are looking for us on the World Wide Web, you want to listen there, it's easier. Maybe you're, somewhere else on Earth. Go ahead and do that. 1029ESPN.com. You listen live on the stream. The stream is available all the time. Thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to pick up your phone and call us, you can do that as well. 329-1899. 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangage Brothers RV phone line. In the show today, we got plenty to get to. First of all, we're going to talk some Cat Grizz basketball and some Cat Viking basketball since Montana State does play Portland State this evening. So we will get into that. We also are going to get into maybe a little bit of college football and some teams that could play who. It looks like USC has canceled their game that was originally scheduled with UC Davis for a little bit of FCS step up to the FBS football in the Power 5. So we get into that a little bit. Top of the hour, looking forward to this. Travis DeCure, the head coach of the University of Montana men's basketball team. He is the subject of our ESPN roundtable this week. Very much appreciate him coming by and a great conversation that we were able to have with him. So we will have him. We also will have Ella Stott from Shoto. She is our Mattress Firm Student of the Week. So we will get have a little conversation with her, see what's going on in Shoto, Montana as well. So there you go. There's a look at what we got in the show today. Also want to remind everybody, Korn coming on Sunday. Along with Breaking Benjamin, we got one more pair of tickets to give away. We gave away a pair of tickets on the social medias this week. We've given away tickets every single day on this show. We will give away another pair of tickets today. This will be the last pair because, well, we're not open on the weekends. You got to come down and pick them up tomorrow. So you'll have one day to come and get those things. But we will give those away, not just today, but in this very segment. So stay tuned for that. Stick around with us. You want to go to the big show on Sunday night. It's starting to gain some momentum, so I'm looking forward to that. So we'll get that thing going. Hi, Colter.
What's up, Gus?
Welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay. Appreciate that. Colter, Montana State. They're 8-6 in conference. They're playing at Portland State. The men are at Portland State. The women are in Bozeman. Portland State beat Montana State the first time they played by 1 point. Montana State, though, has won the last two, is in fourth spot in the Big Sky Conference schedule. This is a big game for both teams. How big a game is this for the Montana State Bobcats as they are awaiting, or they're not awaiting, Montana is awaiting, but they are preparing now on Thursday to play the number one team in the Big Sky in the Grizzlies?
Well, we talk about the rivalry all the time in terms of how big it is, but also the perspective that's oftentimes required to not make it too big, right? Mm-hmm. And in hoops, because you play twice a year and you play 20 league games, it's going to be the best environment that these two teams play in front of, both at home and on the road during conference play each year. But it still is only, 5% of the games that you play? And so in terms of what Montana State is chasing right now and the position that they're in the driver's seat where they're at right now. The Portland State game is as big, if not bigger, just because if you beat the league leader, they might then do some work for you down the stretch and help you catch up. But the more winnable of the two games is the game against Portland State, and you get a chance to split with Portland State. So if you want to maintain your spot in the top five, Bobcats got to take care of business tonight.
Do you think they will?
Man. Portland State, I think, is the most enigmatic team in the conference. I think the thing that makes them so scary, multiple things make them so scary, but I think that they are among the most athletic teams in the conference. I think that their style is the most haphazard and chaotic in the conference. And I also think that this is sort of an attitude that permeates both the football and basketball programs at Portland State. The brighter the lights, the better they play. The better the team, the better they play. That's why they have won 3 out of 4 against the Grizz. They always get up for big games. I think part of that is Holland Woods, certainly. He seems to play his best against the best teams. But, I mean, Portland State right now is sitting at 6-9 in league play. But they have wins.
No, 7-8.
Oh, 7-8, excuse me. That's right. Because they won on Monday against Idaho. That's right. But they have wins at Northern Colorado. They have a win over Montana. They have a win at Montana State. They lost by 2 at Eastern Washington. So when they play their best, they're among the more competitive teams in the league. They've just been up and down. Part of it's scheduling. They are the lone wolf in the league this year. And part of it, I think, is just kind of culture. I think that they have a bunch of guys that when they know they're playing Montana State, it seems like they rise to the occasion a little bit more. So the Bobcats, to me, are the team, probably the 2 Montana schools are the 2 teams in the league that have exceeded expectations more than any other teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Montana State is the team that's exceeded expectations beyond. And so I think that do you play to your level or do you play above your level? I think that's both of these teams. But it's a huge game tonight for both squads when it comes to seeding.
Portland State is 11-3 8-3 when they're at home in Portland. They're 4-11 on the road. Now this is for the whole season, okay? But they lost at Indiana 85-74. They lost at Oregon State by 5, 81-76. I mean, this is a team that went on the road to, high major schools and hung. And even in the case of Oregon State, had a look at that game. So they played fairly well on the road. But a lot of this, when you look at what their schedule is when they've gotten into conference play, have they been at home or have they been on the road? I mean, they lost at Idaho. Okay, they lost at Eastern Washington. We know they beat Montana State in Bozeman by a point. But when they were in Missoula, they lost that game. When they were in Idaho against Montana, or in Portland, against Montana, they won that game. So they have been. This has been so much for Portland State about being in the confines of their own barn, and
it has also been who's healthy.
Sure.
When you play a systematic style like they do, I mean, they like to run a variety of full court traps. They recruit specific personnel for specific roles. The first time they played in Missoula, they didn't have Sal Nuhu. He's their rim protector. Mm-hmm. To play that role, to play that trap, you got to have a guy that's there to protect you. And when you don't, Mac Anderson gets a dunk on 5 plays in a row. If the opponent breaks the press, you're going to get among the most high percentage shots in all of basketball. And the other thing is, though, they brought in, I mean, I was telling you when we were sitting courtside at the Portland State game here in Missoula that I'd never seen a team that has so many new guys. I mean, they have Holland Woods, who's been a proven commodity, and he's one of the best players in the league, certainly. But all the rest of the players on their team, I didn't know a single one of them except for Alonzo Walker, who, by the way, played at Idaho State last year. Mm-hmm. He's a grad transfer. But the other guy who's been a linchpin for them has been Matt Hauser, but he was not full strength when the Grizz played in Portland and lost, and he was not playing when Portland State played in Missoula. Hauser's only played in 8 league games this year, but he's their second leading scorer. He's gone off for 24 points each of the last 2 outings. He's a grad transfer from Santa Clara. He's supposed to be their number 2 guy, and he's supposed to be their number 1 option in the half court. So having him back is huge for them as well. So they're such an anomaly to me because I think when they're at their best, I think they're one of the 4 best teams in the league. They just haven't been there yet because of multiple factors: mentality, honing the chemistry, the schedule, and like you're saying, just the volatility that they've had home and away.
For the Cats, again, they're in 4th spot in the Big Sky Conference standings. They're 8-6 right now. How many wins do you need to get a bye this year? Is it 10? Is it 11?
Well, it's such an interesting question, too, though, because all the teams that are in the cluster of the middle of the league, mm-hmm. they're all going to determine that. I don't really think you can put a number on it. It's not like in past years where you say, okay, you get to 12 league wins, you're probably going to be good. 12 or 13, certainly you're going to get a bye. Because the way the schedule works out now, I mean, I think you could get a bye with 10 wins if everybody splits here, because Montana State still has to play Portland State tonight, and they still have to play NAU and Southern Utah as well. Right. So who knows who beats who?
When you take a look at, though, Montana State and their remaining schedule, the Grizzlies on Saturday, then you go on this interesting road trip to Sacramento State, who you got to win that game, even though the Nest is sometimes a weird and hard place to play.
I mean, Sac State's 9-3 at home.
Yeah, and so but they're down, and they are, they're 6-9 in conference along with Weber State, and I mean, it's not, they're going to win some games, but if you want to be a team that's going to get a bye in Boise coming down the stretch, is a game you just got to go get, especially given the competition that you're going to have. Then it's Northern Arizona in Flagstaff, which is a very tough place to play at almost 7,000 feet, and they have been one of the. I mean, they're right there, 8-7. I mean, they're in the 5th spot right now. They're an at least okay, if not decent, basketball team this season, and then you finish the season at home in an unbelievable pair of final games of the regular season. The way this worked out with Southern Utah and Northern Colorado. That's for both Montana and Montana State. These last 4.
Yep.
But for Montana, obviously they haven't done anything like wrap up the number 1 seed or anything like that. But they are going to have a bye, in the tournament, and they want to just continue to maintain that distance for a lot of reasons that we've discussed before. But for Montana State, there's going to be a couple of L's coming down the stretch. What you don't want is for 2 of them to become 4 of them. Or 5 of them. You got the 2 wins, and I give them a lot of credit over this past weekend over an Idaho State team that you just have to beat, and then a Weber State team that was very down, but got Jarek Harding back, and they still handled them in comfortable fashion in Bozeman. So I give them a ton of credit for putting themselves in this spot.
Yep.
Tonight is a coin flip basketball game. It was a coin flip actually in Bozeman.
Yep.
And here I think these 2 teams match up well together. Who's the more desperate team? Because this is a huge game for Portland State now too. If Portland State doesn't win this game, they're 2 games under 500, and they are on the far outside looking in when it comes to getting a bye, even though you and I both agree that this is a very dangerous club with a lot of good players, great athleticism, and all of that. I mean, Barrett Peary has put together a solid group this season.
Certainly.
But these are, at home, it's a game that they absolutely have circled. Now, they play it on Monday. How much does that affect, if any, what they got going on here? I don't know the answer to that question.
I think they're used to that part by now, though,
because
they've been doing the Monday, Thursday for most of the year, and then they don't play again until Thursday after tonight.
Right. They got a lot. As we talked about, Portland State had the most compressed schedule in terms of playing a bunch of games in the first half of the season.
12-28.
Yep, and then 8 or 10 or whatever.
They had 8 the last 42.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but they did play 3 days ago, and Montana State did not. So
Certainly.
that in terms of this little micro stretch right here, I'm not saying it even does benefit. I mean, you get a couple days off there, you should have your legs back. That shouldn't be an issue. But maybe in terms of the amount of preparation that you can do, the amount of filming. But it's the second time you're playing teams too. I mean, teams are starting to get familiar with one another. They know what's going on. I think this game comes down to, and I hate talking about it in this fashion because not who wants it more, but who's going to play with that desperation, where the team that believes that they have to have this win is probably the team that walks away with that win tonight.
Well, and we always talk about the specific actual personnel and X's and O's matchups that happen in games, and I think it's a bigger deal in football than it is in basketball, and it's a bigger deal in some conference basketball games than it is in others. But we talk a lot about why Portland State is the worst matchup in the league for the Grizz. And Travis DeCuire, who will share his interview in the second hour with you, University of Montana head coach, we talked to him a little bit about Portland State afterwards because we were just kind of shooting the breeze about the league. And he said kind of what we had been saying for a little while, that the Grizz like to dictate the tempo. They like to play a controlled fashion, but when they play Portland State, they have the athleticism to run with Portland State, but sometimes then Portland State dictates the tempo of the game, and that's advantage Portland State.
Yeah.
When we talk about the matchup of this game, though, Montana State doesn't really have any options besides to put the ball in Harold Frey's hands and just trust him to lead the way. That's been the case against most teams, but in terms of navigating Portland State's press, being able to not get overwhelmed by the pressure, I actually think that Montana State is a good matchup.
Yes.
They have a very good matchup.
Yes.
And so playing steady, playing controlled, okay. The other thing that Portland State kills you on, they play this hyperactive style on both sides. They crash the offensive glass as hard as anybody. And Sal Nuhu and Alonzo Walker on missed buckets. On made buckets, Alonzo Walker's guarding the ball, Sal Nuhu's guarding the rim. On missed buckets, they're both crashing the rim, and the guards got to get back. They're third in the country in offensive rebounding.
That's right. 14.3 offensive boards a game for Portland State, behind only, are you ready, West Virginia and Buffalo. Who doesn't know about the great offensive rebounding of Buffalo? I mean, it's just phenomenal right there in Western New York. But, yeah, I mean, it doesn't just happen. If you are a top 10 team in the nation in any category, it's because you are clearly emphasizing that thing. I mean, that's something I'm not going to say any team, but many, many teams can be a top 10 team in the country in some category if they decide, come hell or high water, this is what we're going to do. And they got the horses and the style where they're going after the offensive glass all the time. That creates great second opportunities. Obviously, you get extra shots up, extra points and stuff like that. But also, it creates transition opportunities for the defensive team, or the team that's going after the defensive rebound, if they're able to secure that rebound. And also, because you got people inside the painted area 94 feet away from the bucket they're trying to defend.
Rashad Goolsby and Alonzo Walker both averaging either at or near 3 offensive rebounds per game.
It's remarkable.
But it's part of what they want to do. And
Yes.
this is what Barrett Puri has.
That's right.
It's been his bread and butter from his junior college days all the way till Portland State. And I actually think it's a great style to fit their school and what they have, just in terms of where they can recruit from and things like that. But you wonder if Montana State can combat that too, because if and when Devin Kirby's healthy, Montana State has a couple big guys who can really help them hang on the glass, and that's been one of the reasons why they've been able to turn the corner defensively. That's one part that always gets lost, right? We always think of defenses as Brian Fish, former Montana State coach, used to scream relentlessly, bend your knees. A lot of times it is about bending your knees and sliding and stuff like that. Right. But more than anything, to complete a defensive stop, you have to get the rebound.
Yeah, right.
Joel Bollenboy won Defensive Player of the Year at Weber State twice because he was the leading rebounder in the league. When the shot goes up and they don't make it, when you get the rebound, the stop is complete. And when you're averaging 13.5 rebounds per game like that kid did, that's huge. But Montana State has turned the corner defensively, not just because of their ability to bend their knees, but also because they can secure stops at a more consistent level. That was one of the biggest flaws during the Fish era, was when you're playing a bunch of guards. I mean, Tyler Hall actually rebounded far better than what you'd expect for the three-point shooting king and all-time leading scorer in the history of the league.
Right.
I mean, he was a 5.56 rebound per game guy. But Montana State, they're better at rebounding this year too. So you wonder how that matchup goes too. To me, this game comes down to, can Harold Frey handle the pressure? He almost always rises to the occasion. Is Holland Woods going to put on a show in Portland tonight? Because when he wants to put on a show, he can put on a better show than almost anybody in the league.
Yeah. For
my money, in terms of bright light performers, he's right there with anybody in the conference. Mm-hmm. But then, can the Cats keep Portland State off the offensive glass?
And again, I think in that sense that if there's a team that can, it seems like Montana State would be set up to do that with guys like Jabril Bello, DK, who have the size and, in Bello's case, the strength to pull down and secure those defensive boards even when there's a mass of people. And so the key, though, too, then, is not just getting the rebound, but knowing what to do with it at that point. Like, if you find yourself even numbers going up the floor or better, you're in great shape for Montana State, but it's got to get started. You got to get started quickly. And Portland State, they know how to guard the full length of the floor. I mean, that's another part of the offensive rebounding emphasis to me, is that because they are such a high-pressure and pressing team and do a full court or three-quarters court press throughout most of the basketball game, their players are comfortable knowing where to be if they don't get an offensive rebound, even if they're a long ways away from their own hoop. And they can defend coming back up the floor and defend well. Now, they're going to get beat from time to time, but again, It's what are you willing to give up? You willing to give up a couple of lay-ins in transition going the other way against you to get more offensive rebounds and maybe a couple of turnovers through the course of a game and other opportunities that way? And that has been a strategy that Coach Peary has said that he's okay with, clearly. I mean, that's what he's willing to do, and he believes that in the long run, the percentages are going to bear out in his favor. Stu Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
The other factor is that we see this all the time in league play.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a star player, a team will find sort of the remedy for that guy, and then everybody will try to replicate it. And we've seen when Montana State is at their worst, it's when teams use the strategy that Eastern Washington did both times they played the Cats. And those are Montana State's two most lopsided losses in league play, with the exception of when they played the Grizz here. But the whole strategy is to just knock Harold Frey off the spot. Play physical with him at all times. When he comes off the ball screen, put a body on him. When he gets in the lane, set him to the floor. Trap him. Double team him, whatever it takes. Be physical with him. That's another reason why I think this matchup actually caters to what Montana State does well, because Portland State doesn't run a lot of that half-court stuff. They want to play a full-court game. Well, Harold Frey is crafty enough that he's going to be able to break that so often, and then you're not going to be able to do a lot of those schematics. Portland State's schematic stuff.
I see what you're doing there. You're throwing it back to the middle aughts. Schematical.
The stuff Portland State does in the half court defensively is not complicated. It's actually incredibly simple.
Yeah.
The complicated stuff is all the stuff they do in the full court. In the half court, then they're just going to try to make you work and try to make you take a bad shot, but it's not like Montana, who's doing all sorts of crazy stuff in the half court.
Stu Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We got some high school stuff coming up. You know that the Hellgate Knights boys team is undefeated, right? They're 15-0, but they're not the only undefeated team in the state. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But right now, one more time, can we help the people out Sunday night? No, it's Sunday evenings. I don't know about you, Cole. It's not my favorite time of the week. It's kind of you're off the plateau that was a great weekend, probably enjoyed yourself, and now you're kind of like it's kind of ramping down a little bit. You're like, okay, I better go to bed early, got to get up and go, back to the grind of talking about sports, this hard job I've chosen to do. So Sunday night, if I can find something that I'm into, it's a huge win for me.
Most definitely.
And the excitement level about Sunday at the Adams Center with Korn and Breaking Benjamin seems to be increasing. So let's send another person or two, shall we? A pair of tickets to go see Korn right now. 329-1899, 329-1899. Give us a call. We got a pair of tickets. You're going.
I'm going. Got myself a date today. So that's good.
Did you find you did? Okay, so you.
Well, my lady friend has to work that evening, so our good buddy TP Ty Palmer is going to be joining us. So.
Oh, have mercy! Oh, it just got physical on the floor. Oh, Ty, let's go! Couple of ties in the house on Sunday night.
That's right.
Throwing bows in there. All right.
You're welcome for keeping all you guys famous.
329-1899, 329-1899, the phone number. Last pair of tickets to go see Korn and Breaking Benjamin on Sunday night. Go check them out. We will we'll be there, and we're happy to do that as well. Hey, Mildenberger Motors in Hamilton. They're serving Western Montana for over 60 years. Get in and test drive a Duramax GMC or Chevy. Feel the difference and get the best deal at Mildenberger Motors.
Seafood lovers, it's time to get cracking at the Montana Club's annual Lobster Fest. Feast on one of our 19 mouth-watering lobster dishes, live Maine lobster, succulent lobster tail, and tantalizing one-of-a-kind lobster specialties. 3 big days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, March 5th through the 7th. It only happens once a year. Don't miss it. See the menu at montanaclub.com. The Montana Club's Lobster Fest on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hi there, it's Les Schwab Alignment and Brakes and Shocks and Wheels and Tires. Some tire places don't offer all that, but we do to help keep you safe. It's our Les Schwab Founders Celebration. Get $50 off an alignment. That's nearly half off regular price when you purchase 4 Reputation or Open Range AT tires all month long. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952. Limited time offer while supplies last. Cannot be combined with other offers. Details at leschwab.com.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates. Bozeman, Montana is the center of the Treasure State sports universe this weekend. Friday night, Montana State will induct a star-studded class into the MSU Athletics Hall of Fame, including football legends Dane Fletcher and Bobby Daly. And Saturday, Montana State hosts the Grizzlies for the 301st matchup between old basketball rivals. Tutel and Nuanez will have a front row seat for it all. Come to Universal Athletic on Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. to join Tutel and Nuanez for a live broadcast from UA in Bozeman. Universal Athletic at 912 North 7th Avenue in Bozeman, proud supporters of athletics around the state of Montana.
Attention, anyone in business development. Are you tired of drumming up new business only to have your prospects use your proposals to negotiate better deals somewhere else? Are you sick of getting beat up on price? Are you done working with people who are wasting your time? Would you like to make more money with less prospecting? For a new look at these age-old problems, plan to attend a free 90-minute workshop at the Wingate Hotel in Missoula, Wednesday, February 26th at 9 a.m. If you own or run a business with a team of salespeople, you'll want to attend this too. We'll discuss what separates top performers from everyone else. Stop wasting time and start making more money. Visit PowerSellingWorkshop.com to register today. PowerSellingWorkshop.com for new ways to handle old issues. PowerSellingWorkshop.com.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. Basketball around the state of Montana and around the Big Sky Conference is heating up with March quickly approaching. At the college level, another rendition of the Cat Grizz rivalry will play out in Bozeman on Saturday afternoon and evening, but not before Montana State plays against Portland State tonight. The MSU men, who sit at 8-6 in league play, travel to Portland to take on a Vikings team that posted a 1-point win over the Bobcats in Bozeman last month. The MSU Wiltmen will look for a season sweep of last season's Big Sky Tournament champions, with Portland State playing the first-place Bobcats in Bozeman. The Montana State women are gunning for, their 10th straight victory.
At the high school level of hoops, district tournaments will kick off around the state this weekend, including several hosted in western Montana. The District 6B tournament for boys and girls will take place in Missoula and will be hosted by Loyola Sacred Heart. The District 13C tournaments will take place at Frenchtown High School, and the District 14C tournaments will be hosted in Ronan.
And finally, Montana bull rider Jess Lockwood continued his winning ways, helping lead Team USA Eagle to become the first team in the history of the PBR Global Cup to defend home soil. Lockwood rode 2 out of 4 bowls for a total of 178 points to help the American squad earn just over $362,000.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
The NFL owners have ratified the new CBA for their part in it, and it is now into the Players Association of the NFL. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hi, great to be with you. Thanks for being here with us, letting us be there with you. We appreciate that very much. At 102.9 ESPN on Twitter and Instagram, at Skyline Sports MT, at Gus Tutel on Twitter. You can check us out at all those places. We will also, a little bit more into Grizz Greats a little later on. Check out the Grizz Greats podcast. It's a fun project with tons of stuff there. Some of the bonus episodes, too, have been outstanding. We talk primarily, obviously, about the coaches that are involved in this, most recently Pat Kennedy, but some bonus material. Bonus material in there is just pure gold. I mean, there are some doozies. So give all that stuff a listen. Colter, before we get into our Prep Extra segment, I just quickly wanted to mention this is breaking-ish news, but the NFL owners have ratified the most recent CBA. And that means that 75% of they require 75% owners. It doesn't have to be unanimous, and sources say this was not unanimous, but it was at least, you'd need 24 of the 32 or more to say yes. They have said yes to this thing. It now goes to the Players Association. 2/3 of the player reps have to vote in favor of it, and then, if they do, every player in the league gets a vote. And if 50% of the players vote yes, then it's a done deal. It's ratified. The two main things here are the expansion this forthcoming season, the 2020 and then into the playoffs of 2021 season of the NFL, expanding the playoff by one team. So there would be 7 instead of 6 teams from each conference into the playoffs, which we talked about yesterday. And it also evidently includes a 17th game in the regular season, which would be added at some point in the next 4 years. So it wouldn't be this season. It wouldn't be before 2021, in fact. But sometimes in the next 4 years, they would add an additional regular season game. It also evidently would shorten, I don't know by how many games, but shorten the preseason. And that get for the owners, because the owners are the ones who want more games, right? The more games you get, the more TV stuff you can get, the more fans you can get, the more money you can get. That's the deal, presumably. The players, in adding that 17th game, at risk, obviously, to their health and well-being beyond what 16 is, have evidently lobbied for, and at least from the side of the owners within this, been given concessions of financial variety, where they're going to get, I don't know what the money structure is. Am I right about this? 51% of the budget, of the revenue budget of the team, it goes to player salary, and that's how they create the salary cap in the NFL. I think is what it is. I think it's 51% of it goes to player salary. 49% then goes, I suppose, to all other expenses and the owner's pocket. And there's plenty of other expenses, obviously. Certainly. And I don't know exactly, when you talk about revenue, does that include, apparel sales and that sort of thing, concession sales inside the venue? I don't know what all is included and what all is not. But I think that's the way it breaks down. I don't know if this means now that 55 or 60% of that is going to the players. I don't know if it means that the salary cap is somehow increased in general, or what?
The players currently get 48%.
Oh, 48. So it's 48-52. So it's 52% for the owners and the costs, and then the players get 48. So my best guess would be is that percentage now will go up for the players if this, as a concession to playing a 17th game of the regular season. I don't know. 16 had a certain symmetry of it, maybe because there's 32 teams. There's really no relationship there. You can always play, of course, an odd number of games or an additional game, and it's just going to mean whatever it means, and there's still going to be the records and the tiebreakers and so forth. I don't know. Football, when you talk about comparison, I mean, it used to be, a 14-game schedule, right? And going back. So this is not like baseball where, in order to talk about home runs hit in a season, you need to have some consistency over time. We already know that the rules have changed so much that now passing yardage is so much, bigger and more inflated than whatever it was. So, I don't have a problem with it in terms of now we won't know who's good anymore compared to the old days or something like that. I don't have a problem there. 17 weeks, I don't know, more football. Probably fans are, in general happy about this. It might be a win-win all the way around.
Besides for the players.
Well, but if the players are getting paid more as a result of this, too, not just more in terms of an additional game check, but actually have a bigger piece of the pie, that's probably good.
So much of it comes down to what they cut out of the preseason, too.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know. I just think that the last couple weeks of the NFL season are, for a very few teams, relevant, and for so many teams, irrelevant.
Right.
But
what's the problem with that? Is that a problem? I mean, first of all, let me be clear. Does another week, that doesn't add another week of irrelevancy. It just means there is, instead of it being weeks 15 and 16 that were irrelevant, now it's weeks 16 and 17, or, games 16 and 17. I mean, there's teams that are irrelevant from dang near the halfway point of the season.
It's true.
On.
The Dolphins last year were irrelevant from day one.
They were not irrelevant because they played the most relevant game on the last game of the season when they beat the Patriots. Am I right?
I mean, remember, I think it was either 2 or 3 seasons ago. It was the year Aaron Rodgers got hurt.
Yeah.
Was that 2 or 3 years ago?
2 years ago.
The injuries are just massive around the NFL all the time. I mean, it's the most violent game in America. So that you're not going to ever be able to make injuries not be a part of it. But there's been certain years where more marquee players get hurt, and I just think that more games, more regular season games, raises the likelihood, the percentages that that's going to happen, and I just think that in general is bad for the game. I don't know. I don't think more games is better for the NFL.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think less games would be better?
I do.
To what point?
I think the NFL should play 2 to 3 preseason games and a 15-game schedule.
So you think one less regular season game is significant?
But just reducing it by 1 preseason and 1 regular season would be significant.
Here's the thing. The preseason games are, I mean, there are a bunch of teams now who have taken their marquee, their top 10 guys. They flat don't play in the preseason, or maybe they play a half.
Yeah.
So the number of games that are being played in the preseason is actually, to me, already irrelevant. If you're talking about health and stuff like that. I mean, I just don't see it.
They are, but they're not, because every time you step on the field, you could get hurt.
But that's what I'm saying. They're not stepping on the field.
Right, but you watch Hard Knocks.
Sure.
The way that a team navigates training camp, the way that the cuts fall, when you're going to get your young guys reps, eliminating a game, it makes it more concise, the amount of time that you're going to do that. So I agree that the headliner players aren't, but there's so many guys that are trying to make their way, and if you have to make that a shorter period of time, I think it raises the level of competition and reduces the amount of time and amount of snaps where guys can get hurt.
Well, here's my deal. First of all, I mean, I don't know that the amount of time that they're in training camp is any different. I mean, is training camp now going to be a week less of time?
No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just like this last year on Hard Knocks when Luke Wilson was trying to make
the Raiders. Yeah.
And Luke Wilson's a veteran guy who's played in the league for a long time. He's not a star, but he's also he's a good player.
8-9 year guy.
He's a good player. Like, he played for the Seahawks on championship teams. So
played for the Seahawks again this year as it turned out.
And he ended up getting another chance for sure.
Yeah.
But he got hurt in that 3rd preseason game, and it was just running a stick route, and you roll your ankle, and then all of a sudden you're out. And even though it's not a catastrophic season-ending injury, he didn't make the team because that other kid, their rising star tight end, I can't remember his name, then went and balled the rest of that game, and bam, he makes the team. And I think that little things like that, it affects the way that the rosters evolve.
Well, I'll grant you that. I will. Okay, that's fine. But I also think that, first of all, there's no early cut anymore. It used to be at 92 and then down to 75 and then to 53. I think it's 90, whatever, 91, 92 guys, and then the day after the 4th or whatever the last regular preseason game.
I think there's 2 cuts.
I think there's now just 1. I think it's everybody and then 1 cut. And my deal is I'm fine having less preseason games, but all I'm saying is in terms of the injuries to guys who we're watching, it's pretty rare that it happens in the regular season. It certainly does. We've seen plenty of, especially ACLs, but whether that happens in the preseason or the regular season, that's more a function of guys who haven't been playing football now going and playing football full out again. And there's more injuries to me early in the season than there are in the middle and the ends of the season.
Right.
And you are adding a game to the end of the season. And that certainly isn't saying that now everybody's going to be okay or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that I think in terms of the amount of additional risk that's there, there is some. It appears, and if they ratify this, it will be cemented, that the risk that has been added by adding a 17th game has been overcome by whatever remuneration is going to be available to them.
But a roster, every single thing that happens on a roster affects everybody. So if in that fourth preseason game, the New York Giants lose their third running back for the first half of the season, that affects Saquon Barkley's workload early in the year. Every single element trickles downhill in terms of depth. And so I agree with what you're saying in terms of specific guys, but every chance that there is to play football, you could lose somebody any snap, and that will affect everybody on your team.
I think it's overstated. I mean, if you lose the number 3 running back on your team, I still think Saquon Barkley's going to play whatever he's going to play. And then you're going to just come in with whoever you got. I mean, that's what it's going to be. The areas where I think there's so few offensive linemen, 8 usually right on a roster.
Right.
That is an area where if you lose your 7th or 8th guy, that is noticeable, and especially, obviously then you're kind of walking without a net, and then you're talking about, well, can you block for your quarterback if the starter goes, all that kind of stuff. But putting together a scenario in which any of this could happen, does it make an additional game a situation where it will happen? I'm not so sure.
Players are going to vote this down, right?
No. I think the players are going to ratify this.
Wow.
Because, and we don't know what the amount is, because at the end of the day, man, they're going to get paid out of this, right? They're going to get paid out of this. And going from 1/16th to 1/17th, I don't know. I just think that they're okay with it. It's incremental enough that I don't think that the additional risk of playing an additional game is enough to say, no, we're going to walk away from, whatever the percentage is. And I will be curious to know what that percentage is. Like, if it's 2%, is it worth it? Probably it's not. In my opinion, I would side with you. If it was 5% of the total revenue, where all of a sudden your salary cap's going to be increased by $30 million, maybe then it is worth it. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Let's get to this quickly, Coulter. It's our Prep Extra segment. It's brought to us by the Farmers State Bank. Farmers State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907, and they have right now 10 $10,000 scholarships available to seniors across Western Montana. Go to farmersebank.com to find out more. Coulter, the Missoula Hellgate Knights boys basketball team, they're 15-0. They're the number 1 team in the state. Right now, by the way, if you're keeping track at home, boys and girls tallying away, Billings West is 13-1. They're number 2. Missoula Sentinel at 13-2 is in third, followed by Helena Capital and Billings Skyview. But there's also another undefeated team in the state, Hardin. Look out, Hardin, 17-0, rolling downhill right now with the Hard and what an unbelievable group that they got, Coulter, right now. Front-loaded, they're ahead of Butte Central by 2 games, who is 15-2.
And Hardin in a game that was supposed to be super up and down, it was up and down one way. They played Lodgegrass, who was number 2 in Class B last week, and they hung 91 points on them in a 91-60 victory. So the 2 matchups between Hardin and Lodgegrass this year, Hardin averaged 101 points per game in those 2 meetings. That's amazing in itself. But Hardin has a very fascinating story because they won the Class A state title when Famous Left Hand, their best player, was a sophomore. Then they lost in the State A title game last year to Billings Central, and now they're on sort of a redemption tour, and I think it would be a great feather in their caps to be able to go out on top. So they're definitely one of the most fun teams in the state to watch. Other things happening in AA, Hellgate continues to roll. I don't know who's going to challenge Hellgate. I don't know if anybody can challenge Hellgate. But the rest of the West looks pretty strong as well. Missoula Sentinel beat Helena Capital last Saturday, 64-54, and that pushes Sentinel to, they cemented the conference's number 2 seed, so they'll be the number 2 seed in the district tournament.
Yep.
Helena Capital's 3rd. So the West is strong. Billings West is the top seed out of the East right now. Like you said, 13-1 overall. They had a nice 72-66 win over Billings Skyview. Skyview's been one of the hottest teams in the league. They were on a 7-game winning streak. They struggled early. I don't know why. I think maybe it was an injury situation. But they were on a 7-game winning streak till they lost to West. So then right now in the East, it's West, then Great Falls High, then Skyview. So jockeying for seeding continues. The small school district tournaments start this week. You got Class B and Class C going on all over the state. And then next week, you'll have the two bigger divisions starting as well. So tournament basketball in Montana. It's going to be fun.
Stu Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. This has been our Farmers State Bank Prep Extra segment. Again, this year, $10,000 scholarships going to be awarded from Farmers State Bank. Visit farmersebank.com to learn more and apply online. To date, they've given away over $1.2 million in scholarships to high school seniors. Phenomenal stuff from Farmers State Bank. We'll take a quick break. On the other side, USC has canceled their 2021 home game against UC Davis. They will still pay out $725,000 to Davis for not playing the game. Oh, that's probably worth it.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
At Opportunity Bank of Montana, we know that checking accounts are not one size fits all. Let us introduce you to Opportunity Bank's full suite of checking account products, including personal and business options with no minimum balance and no monthly service fee. Or if earning cash back suits you, Opportunity Reward Checking may be the perfect fit. Need to earn interest? We have those options too. Call or come into Opportunity Bank for a checking account that fits you. Opportunity Bank of Montana, serving Montanans since 1922. Member FDIC.
When the mountains are calling, a Floco Mocha is just what you need to hit the road. Florence Coffee serves an exclusive, rich, all-natural chocolate blend for a mocha like no other. Top it off with real whipped cream, and you're set for whatever your day has in store. Get your Floco Mocha at any of our locations throughout western Montana and go to FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky, Florence Coffee Company.
Bozeman, Montana is the center of the Treasure State sports universe this weekend. Friday night, Montana State will induct a star-studded class into the MSU Athletics Hall of Fame, including football legends Dane Fletcher and Bobby Daly. On Saturday, Montana State hosts the Grizzlies for the 301st matchup between old basketball rivals. Tutel and Nuanez will have a front row seat for it all. Come to Universal Athletic on Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. to join Tutel and Nuanez for a live broadcast from UA in Bozeman. Universal Athletic at 912 North 7th Avenue in Bozeman, proud supporters of athletics around the state of Montana.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Buffalo soldier, tread like a rasta. It was a buffalo soldier in the heart of America. Stolen from Africa, brought to America.
2021, UC Davis will not be playing USC. But still a bunch of teams that will be stepping up from the Big Sky to play in the FBS. Who are they and who's going to win, if any? It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you on this Thursday afternoon. Boys and girls, tomorrow, Friday, we're going to have a little bit of fun with you tomorrow. Coulter will be in Bozeman at Universal Athletic in Bozeman, Montana, also site of the Montana Football Hall of Fame.
Montana State Montana State is having their Hall of Fame ceremony. We will be broadcasting from the Football Hall of Fame, certainly.
Yeah, and we got a couple of guests lined up for you tomorrow, which we're looking forward to. Coulter, who are we going to see?
Bobby Daly's going to stop by. He's an All-American linebacker in the mid-2000s, a Helena native.
And being inducted, right,
tomorrow night? Inducted, yep. It's definitely a star-studded induction class. I mean, they do it every year, and there's always great people going in, but I think Bobby Daly was a memorable guy. His dad played for the Cats. His brother Brad won the Buck Buchanan Award for the Bobcats later on. But also Dane Fletcher's going in, and Dane Fletcher definitely one of the favorite sons of Bozeman. He's from Bozeman, Montana. He ended up going on and playing in the NFL, played for the New England Patriots when they played in the Super Bowl. So he definitely had one of the more star-studded careers of recent Bobcats. So should be a well-attended event for sure. So Bobby's going to swing by beginning the show tomorrow.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And obviously we will do a lot of Cat Grizz basketball as well in there. Speaking of, about 10 minutes from now, Travis DeCure, the head coach of the Montana Grizzly men's basketball team, joining us on the ESPN Roundtable. Stick around for that. Coulter, USC's canceled their home game against UC Davis in 2021. I don't know the nature of this. They will still pay, evidently, $725,000 to UC Davis for backing out of this thing late. We'll see if UC Davis fills that or chooses not to, but they're going to get their check for that thing in any case. By the way, this is interesting. Good work on the research here by David. USC, one of 3 teams in the FBS that has never played an FCS opponent.
Wow.
The other 2, Notre Dame and UCLA. What is it with Los Angeles? Hey, get over yourselves, Come on. Anyhow, that will now continue since USC is backed out of this deal. But the question here is, there's the 2020 list, we have it here, of Big Sky teams that are playing FBS opponents. We'll go through it quickly. Coulter, just give me, as I go through these, the best chance that you think. You don't have to tell me this is the game that's going to happen. If you think that, then great. Give me the team with the best chance of actually winning a game against an FBS opponent. Montana State is at Utah. Weber State is at Wyoming. Cal Poly is playing both Louisiana Monroe and Cal. UC Davis will be playing Nevada and San Jose State. Northern Colorado is at Colorado State. NAU is at Arizona State. Sac State is at San Diego State and Washington. Idaho will play at Temple. How about that? Going to Philadelphia to take on Temple. And Washington State for the Vandals as well. Eastern Washington is at Florida. I'm going to say Noonan on that one. I'll just strike that from the record. Portland State is at Arizona and Oregon State. Southern Utah is at Utah State. And Idaho State is taking on the Lobos of New Mexico and Fresno State. Any of these jump out to you? I got a couple on here that I go, wouldn't shock my socks off.
Initially, I thought Louisiana, but that Louisiana Lafayette, not Louisiana Monroe, is on some probation. They had some NCAA violations. The guy, his name escapes me at this exact moment, who went to Austin Peay.
Mm-hmm.
He was forced out there because of some of the recruiting violations. If it was Louisiana Lafayette, I might have said Mark Hudspeth.
There
exactly. Yep. If it was Louisiana Lafayette, I would have said that, but I don't know anything about Louisiana Monroe.
Well, they are certainly in terms of the programs, they're the next tier down from Louisiana Lafayette, the Ragin' Cajuns.
Right.
Louisiana Monroe is the Warhawks, and if you were going to say, maybe it could happen from an opponent standpoint, you put that down there with Cal Poly. Bo Baldwin, what is he, get in there and, mix it up, come in with a bit of a surprise. Who knows? Okay, there's one.
I don't know who is going to play quarterback for UC Davis next year. They do have a lot of talent returning otherwise. They beat San Jose State 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
San Jose State is terrible.
They are bad.
So I think that's one that has maybe a chance. Who knows where Weber State's at? Weber State at Wyoming is maybe. David, how's Wyoming going to be next year?
I mean, Wyoming is one of the best teams in the Mountain West when they have Sean Chambers. Weber State is going to get their butt kicked.
Wyoming did go to a bowl, did they not, this past season? They made it into a bowl game, so they're
Arizona Nova Home Loans Bowl, baby.
Wonderful. The other game, you ready for this, Coulter? And I hate it from the Big Sky's standpoint, potentially, but New Mexico's bad, and they have just got yet another new coach. Idaho State at New Mexico. Now, Idaho State it all went bad for Idaho State down the stretch.
Yeah.
But they've had a couple of moments where they were like, okay, Coach Fenn Dog going to pull this thing out of the fire. Another year, another group together, okay, see what happens. And it is a bad New Mexico team. I'm not saying I'm picking that game. I'm just saying, okay? So there you go.
I think it's more likely that Matt Struck only throws one interception in that game.
There's no way that Matt Struck is even on campus at Idaho State.
Cannot happen.
Right?
Can't roll him back out there. No, that's bad.
They'll make sure that he leaves the program.
Yeah.
Not
leaves the program, but you got.
Yeah, if he's on campus in August, I'll be surprised.
If you can't out recruit multiple pick sixes per game, you can't do that. You can't do that. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour 2 straight ahead. Travis DeCure, head coach of the Montana Grizzly men's basketball team, the ESPN Roundtable. Right after this, the Polaris New Year's sales event is on, and now is the time to find your perfect ride at Kurtz Polaris with financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months and savings of up to $3,500. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. The mountains are full of snow, and Kurtz has all the best machines, apparel, and accessories to take full advantage of the season. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. The most fun you can have in snow, Kurtz Polaris. Winter awaits.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at SelwayArmory.com.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Bozeman, Montana is the center of the Treasure State Sports Universe this weekend. Friday night, Montana State will induct a star-studded class into the MSU Athletics Hall of Fame, including football legends Dane Fletcher and Bobby Daly. And Saturday, Montana State hosts the Grizzlies for the 301st matchup between old basketball rivals. Tutel and Nuanez will have a front row seat for it all. Come to Universal Athletic on Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. to join Tutel and Nuanez for a live broadcast from UA in Bozeman. Universal Athletic at 912 North 7th Avenue in Bozeman, proud supporters of athletics around the state of Montana.
Hey, it's Carolyn, the chick who doesn't know about sports. Tune into my weekly segment on Fridays where we talk about, well, I don't really know what we talk about. Sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's athletes. It's usually gossip, but it's always funny.
The Chick Who Doesn't Know About Sports is brought to you each week by the Iron Grizz. The Iron Grizz is hosting weekly wine tastings each Wednesday beginning at 6 p.m. So tune into Tutel and Nuanez each Friday to listen to Carolyn.
That's me.
The Chick Who Doesn't Know About Sports. Presented each week by the Iron Grizz next to the University of Montana Golf Course. Hey Gus, you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Rings a bell.
One of the greatest basketball superstars of all time played for a man named Judd Heathcote at Michigan State. And guess what? Judd Heathcote started his career at the University of Montana.
Coulter, did you know that 2 former University of Montana head coaches have been head coaches in the NBA and 1 on Team USA?
Isn't that amazing?
And that's why we've created Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree podcast. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Just search Grizz Greats.
It's a phenomenal and historic podcast series proudly presented by Blackfoot Communications and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, and Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. Basketball around the state of Montana and around the Big Sky Conference is heating up with March quickly approaching. At the college level, another rendition of the Cat Grizz rivalry will play out in Bozeman on Saturday afternoon and evening, but not before Montana State plays against Portland State tonight. The MSU men, who sit at 8-6 in league play, head to Portland to take on the Vikings, who have posted a 1-point win over the Bobcats in Bozeman last month. The MSU women, meanwhile, will look for a season sweep of last year's Big Sky Tournament champions when Portland State is playing first place Montana State in Bozeman tonight. Montana State women, by the way, looking for their 10th straight win.
At the high school level, district tournaments kick off around the state this weekend, including several hosted in western Montana. The District 6B tournament for boys and girls will take place in Missoula. It will be hosted by Loyola Sacred Heart. The District 13C girls and boys tournaments will take place at Frenchtown High School, and the District 14C tournament will be hosted by Ronan.
And finally, Montana bull rider Jess Lockwood continued his winning ways, helping lead Team USA Eagle to become the first team in the history of the PBR Global Cup to defend home soil. Lockwood rode 2 of 4 bulls for a total of 178 points to help the American squad earn $362,000 in Dallas, Texas.
ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law. Polaris Studio, here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
No handlebars, dude. Great track. Great track. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hour number 2 coming at you. If you missed anything in the first hour, listen on the podcast. The Tutel Nuanez podcast is available all the time, wherever you get your podcasts. Check it out. Rate it, subscribe, review, all that stuff is there thanks to Blackfoot Communications and the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Check out the new Blackfoot link, too, that's up there on the old podcast as well. Colter, we had the opportunity today to speak with head coach of the Montana men's basketball team, Travis DeCuire. It's our ESPN Roundtable. It's presented by Paradise Falls. And I don't know, man, like the more you just get to sit and talk with Coach DeCuire, the more you I could sit and talk with Coach DeCuire just straight about basketball, but anything forever. I mean, it's great to just sit and chat with him. You know what I mean? He's an enrapturing, engaging guy.
I was listening to our Grizz Greats episode with Blaine Taylor as I was driving back here this afternoon, and Blaine has a line in there. He says, "Hell, I'm going to the Hall of Fame at a place where I got let go." He said, he's talking about Old Dominion,
right?
He said that it doesn't matter who you are. At some point, being a head coach in college basketball is going to humble you. I thought about that line in relation to Travis DeCuire. He's so driven, so focused, and so competitive. I don't think anybody's impervious to anything, but if there is somebody that's impervious to that,
right,
we'll see. He's an impressive person, and he's an impressive member of this community. I think people need to appreciate. I think people do, but I think they really need to appreciate what we have because he's a phenomenal coach, and he's done. I mean, the Grizz are closing in on their 4th regular season title in 6 years.
It's impressive.
All the coaches we've interviewed for the Grizz Greats, none of them won 4 regular season titles in 6 years.
Yeah. Boys and girls, at 12-3, the Montana Grizzlies are a game and a half ahead of the field. Enjoy our ESPN Roundtable with Travis DeCuire. Well, welcome in to the ESPN Roundtable, and happy to be joined this week by the head coach of the University of Montana men's basketball team, Travis DeCuire. Coach DeCuire, you came all the way across town, and you're in studio. Thanks for being here. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're certainly happy to have you in here, and it's been an interesting and a very fun season for Grizz fans watching your basketball team play. There was, I think, a lot of question marks for a lot of people, maybe even for yourself, coming into this season with the class that graduated. And once again, 15 games in, 3/4 of the way through the regular schedule, 12-3, a game and a half up on the field, and they won 5 in a row now. What has maybe surprised you pleasantly the most about your team this year, if anything?
the response to challenges. There have been a lot of individual challenges throughout the season. Probably had more one-on-one meetings with this group than any team we've had, and none of it was like attitude adjustments or any of that type of stuff. Some of it was role definement, but most of it was just watching film, describing what we need from guys individually, seeing what they're doing right, seeing what they're doing wrong. It took us a long time to mold this team together.
I was telling Ryan in the non-conference that watching you guys early, it was trying because you guys, there was not a lot of flow, and I think that everybody that was involved, whether it was you as coaches or the players, you could tell. And I think that part of that just comes with chemistry, learning how to play with each other, and role definition, all the things that go into just the making of a roster. And I was just so interested to see what was going to happen with this team because it seemed like the last month of the non-conference, just an uphill battle the whole way. You had the loss to Montana Tech. That game against Omaha seemed like it was kind of just rock bottom in terms of shooting. But then you guys burst out to a 3-1 conference start. All of a sudden, you're 7-1 in league play. And to watch it turn and click like it did, very impressive. In your mind, though, what changed the most?
I just think we got further along into the season. We got closer to being confident in who we were individually and collectively in playing our role. But also we got our defense and our offense completely in, which allowed us to spend more time on skill development, shooting, and just playing. We weren't playing very much in practice the first 2 months. It was a lot of breakdown, a lot of situations, which meant there's no flow in practice. And if there's no flow in practice, there's no flow in the game.
When you talk about skill development in the context of practice, I mean, people, I think, hear that and they think, well, what do we dribbling around cones? We take it more free throws? What does that mean? Because there's so many different ways to develop skills, particularly it's one thing to be skillful in a gym and it's another thing to be skillful in a game, right?
Yeah, and it's different for each guy. There's some guys that need certain shots, and once you've finalized where guys are in the offense, now when we do shooting, they get more game shots, as opposed to, they might shoot 3 or 4 shots in practice now, as opposed to 15 or 20 different scenarios. So they're getting more reps of the actual shots that they're going to take in a game. It's also some of just playing and getting a feel for it. And, there's a few guys in our program that do a good job of shooting on their own, and there's some that don't. And when you start to practice shorter and you have more time for the skill stuff, guys are getting up more shots daily because we're shooting more in practice. But you can't do that in November and December. It's just hard to do unless you return a veteran team like we have in the past.
One of my favorite parts about basketball broadly is just the delicacy of the chemistry of a team, the artistry that goes with developing that. And sometimes it is such an intangible element. Sometimes you don't even really know how to develop it. It has to just form on its own. But in your mind, how does something like that grow? Because it's probably the most essential element of basketball.
Yeah, the biggest thing for us, I think, is trust. That's been a common word for us here lately is seniors got to trust the freshmen. Freshmen got to trust the seniors. And then everyone in between's got to trust everyone. And that's hard. When you got 3 guys that have been leaders of their team the last couple of years, go-to guys, they're very confident in who they are and they try to make plays. But you've got a couple of seniors that they've been waiting their turn and, they feel like it's their team, it's their turn. And it's tough on the chemistry early. And like I said, when we start meeting and watching film and discuss decision-making and, we've used the term good to great. You pass up an okay shot for a great shot. And that might mean the best shooter might not shoot it. When you get to that point, then you become a good offensive team. And typically when you have good flow offensively, you put less pressure on your defense and transition and turnovers and things like that. So once again, your mind, your approach, your togetherness always has an effect on both sides of the ball.
When you talk about in terms of the team makeup, sometimes the assumption is that when freshmen come in, they got to be brought along, they got to be taught. Certainly they do. But also, is there an element at which, because they're sort of moldable into this new program, they can fit sometimes easier than more veteran guys who then are established. And then when you put those together, it can be, I don't know, like the teeth on a zipper. I mean, kind of coming together if it goes right. Do you see that?
Definitely. And that's why it's important is to recruit from programs, not just basketball teams. There's a lot of guys out there that people recruit that put up numbers. They're good players, but they don't win. They don't come from programs that have won. They're not being coached. The ball's just rolled out. Those guys, it takes a lot longer to get on one page, on the same page as the group, which is a big part of transferring, and it's played a role in transferring here. And so our freshmen all came from environments where they were coached. There was a level of expectation of how you play, and it wasn't always about just them individually, and it's made it a lot easier to mold them with our group.
A lot of times at this level, though, when you get big-time recruits that you beat some schools for, they're 3-star guys, they come to the level like the Big Sky because they think they're going to be stars right away, and it doesn't seem like these guys have. I know that you've gone through some stuff with maybe reminding them of that, but it seems by and large that Josh Vasquez, Derek Carter-Hollinger, and Kyle Owens have bought in pretty well to not being the dudes.
No question. And there have been moments. There's a guy here that you might bring in and say, we need more out of you. And there's another guy that, hey, what's up? You're not the same guy you were last week. Or you have to have these conversations that remind them what the long run looks like, remind them that every game isn't going to be like last game. And for freshmen, that's the hardest part. You jump up and have 19 points. You think, I can do this every night now. Well, the reality is those same shots might not be available. Maybe the way they were defending us left something out there for you that might not exist in the next game. Maybe you've moved up on the scouting report.
Travis Zakir joining us, the head coach of the University of Montana men's basketball team. They're 12-3 at Montana State. Cat Grizz round 2 this season, Saturday evening. Saeed Pridgett, led this team in scoring last season on a stacked team. So we know what he can do on this floor. His development in terms of his ability to play basically every position, both ends, has been truly remarkable. But I think, speak for Coulter as well here, his leadership quality that he has brought to this team has been something that we didn't know exactly what that was going to look like for him, and it has been as obvious to us as anybody that we've seen. Did you know that you were going to get that from him this season?
Yeah, he's different than any leader I've had, and I think one of the reasons I respect his approach so much is it's fairly similar to what mine was in terms of the competitiveness. And so he leads a lot by example, but also when he's vocal, his expectations on his teammates is vocalized. And you've got to have thick skin to play with Saeed. And so there's a lot of times where, his emotions are on his sleeve, and he, jump on my back when I'm playing well, and when I'm not, pick me up. And he has no problem vocalizing that. But I think that his guys know what he wants for the group, and because they understand that it's not just about him, they follow. And it's been fun to watch. But he showed signs of that last year when Jamar went out. The guys were kind of looking around, and, there were some people that were comfortable in the roles that they had, but they weren't ready for their role to change. And he was the one guy that I thought was ready for his role to change because once, like I said earlier today, is that he was further along than maybe his opportunity was available to him. And so, we had to sit down with the team and say, hey, he's the guy, and we're going to have to be okay with that if we're going to keep winning. And so his leadership of this program started probably last year in February.
Thought there was a great moment after the last rivalry game where I think Ryan asked Saeed a question about the way that he was making adjustments offensively against the Cats zone, and then when they switched their defense in the second half when he took over against the one-on-one coverage, especially when they were guarding with a freshman, and he said, hey, I kind of just take what they give me, but sometimes I demand the ball. And Coach and I kind of talked about it, and he said, yeah, that's kind of what you said, but I think that you mentioned it. I mean, you guys are similar personalities. You're a very demanding guy. You demand the best out of everybody, even us. You're always demanding everybody. But it seems like Saeed reacts to that maybe more than any player you might have even had. So how much of that has just accentuated the way he's been able to blossom this year?
No, he and I had this conversation when he was a freshman, that I came to the conclusion there's a certain way to communicate with him to get the most out of him, and we agreed that that's what our communication would be like for the rest of his career here, and it's been very positive. And so there are moments during the game where he's voicing a thought, and it's not necessarily calm, cool, and collectively the way he vocalizes it. And if you're not prepared for that, then it could go the other direction. But he means well. He wants to win. He's trying to solve it right now. And one of the things I think that separates him from most other scorers is the game is slow, and he can slow it to his pace, and he sees bodies moving. And so most guys are reluctant to pass. They're going to shoot into double teams and triple teams, and he'll do that from time to time. That's what scorers do. But he's pretty good at manipulating that second, third defender and finding open guys, which makes it very difficult to shut him down. And that's why he scores in spurts, because when they stop coming, that's when he gets aggressive.
We covered this league since 2006, and there's been a whole bunch of guys that have had great careers, that have had great senior years. But so often when you're a guy who breaks out on the scene before your senior year, then by the time you get to your senior year, the spotlight's so bright. You have so much pressure on you. And you see it around the league right now, even with guys like Jarek Harding chasing the all-time scoring lead. He's got it at Weber. He's chasing the all-time scoring record in the Big Sky Conference. A guy like Harold Frey's been a huge contributor at Montana State for several years. Trayvon Allen at Idaho. But these guys now, they're in their seniors. They're having good years. They are. But they're focused on so much attention. They have a lot of pressure on them. Are they actually playing their absolute best basketball in terms of just the free play and with confidence in the flow of the game? That's what's been so pleasant to watch Saeed, is he's truly letting the game come to him and taking over at the same time. It's been a while since we've seen a dude actually in his senior year go out with this sort of a crescendo. How's he been able to do it? I mean, what's this like to watch for you?
I think he's done a good job of balancing the pressure and keeping his focus on the things that matter. I think he's so focused on winning that the individual accolades aren't overshadowing his thought process on a daily basis. And then that's been a problem for most guys. Those guys you named, I don't know that they're going through that, but it's common. And when you look at the stat sheet, it looks like it. When you've got a guy that's shooting 30-something% from the floor, typically that doesn't lead to a lot of wins percentage-wise. Sometimes that's because he's got to do a lot, and it makes it difficult. I think Saeed's got to do a lot, and somehow he still shoots for percentage. He's still, I think right now, top 5 in every category that matters. And that's balance and playing the right way. And sometimes you've got to help to do that. But I think that, the pieces fit around him. Early in the year, we weren't making those shots when he was making those passes. And so he stopped making those passes. And there was a point in time where we told him, stop passing. You can take 20 shots anytime you want. If you can get 20 shots off, you can have 20 shots. And eventually we got better around him. We got more consistent. Conversation changed. Okay, well, we don't need you to take 20 shots anymore. I think we're there now.
Well, and, those guys you mentioned, too, they're the show on their teams, basically. Right. Whereas your team, Travis, I mean, the level of talent that's there, whether it's young, whether it's veteran, is pretty high all the way around. I want to talk about Kendall Manuel for a moment, though, because he's a guy who in his college career, whether it's Oregon State or here, going into this season, has been get your shot, get your spot. You're going to get set up, and you just knock it down. He's had to do a lot more driving, get to the bucket. I mean, my God, he threw down a dunk. Did you see that? He dunked the basketball? I mean, shocking.
I wrote a story about it last night. I posted it this morning, and it was because that was his 1,000th career point. Right. And I thought it was ironic that the guy who's made more jump shots than maybe anybody in the whole league, right. I think he's made 140 field goals this year. I think 2 of them have been dunks. Everything else has been a 15 to 25 footer. But it was a great moment. But I mean, he has. It seems like his offensive evolution has been a necessity for this team in terms of what he's done. And it seemed like he wasn't entirely comfortable with that early and has become much more comfortable with that now.
Again, I say trust. And he worked as hard as anyone in our program. I don't know if anyone worked as hard as him in terms of the time he spent in the weight room, what he was doing before our workouts and after our workouts. And so he invested in being successful. And he wanted to be successful, and he wanted to win. And early in the year, I think that he put a lot of pressure on himself, and he had some other stuff going on that were distracting him, unfortunately, the adversities that we go through in life. And I think at a young age, it was a bit much for him. And once the smoke cleared on that, I think his mind cleared on the court. But at the same time, maybe he was trying to do a little too much, as was Saeed and as were the freshmen. And you saw it offensively for us. There was no flow. The ball wasn't moving. It was sticky. Once he started to trust that the ball will actually come to him, he started to turn down okay shots and start getting better shots, and then that's when his percentages started to make sense.
Stu Tillman-Wallace, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Travis DeCure in studio with us, ESPN Roundtable. I want to ask you about you a little bit. When you take over for Wayne Tinkle, you have a good program that you're inheriting, but also I know that you wanted to mold it into the style of basketball and the player that your vision was, and that took some time to do, and you did that, and you were successful the whole way through, and now we know what's happened the last couple of years, but also that class is going to remain one of the all-timers in the history of the program, and so now it feels like you're in sort of a third iteration of you as the head coach of this program and this team. You've answered the bell every time since you've been here. What has it been like for you to move through last year into this season with 3 freshmen and now a really new mold again?
It's been phenomenal. For me, I have these moments when my day starts in the morning. I have these moments late night watching the film, skimming through standings and stats nationally, that I evaluate myself. I reset individual goals for, whatever the moments might be. And it's not always wins and losses. And some of it might be recruiting. Some of it might be an individual player on the team of what I want to get out of them. And so through those things, I have opportunities to reset. And when that group graduated last year, that was a major reset. And, my goal was to not have slippage. And that's very difficult to do, especially when you have a group of so many seniors, to not dip. And I thought that there's still room for growth for our group, for our program, in terms of where we are. And I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we're set up to continue with that, with the young group that we have on the floor, the young group coming in. And so it's been exciting, and that's really what basketball is about, or any athletics for a head coach, is to keep moving, and not necessarily moving the bar, because I don't know that you can win 52 games in 2 seasons again. But what I can do is create a goal for a group and try to achieve it, and that's the funnest part about this.
This team, we talk about this, the state of college basketball. I stayed up late last night reading stories on The Athletic. One of the stories I read was about Memphis and Penny Hardaway and what's going on there. And Penny Hardaway comes in and he signs the number 1 recruit in the country. He signs the number 1 recruiting class in the country. He gets up there at his press conference. He's ultimately confident. He says, "We want all the smoke. Bring it on. We're Memphis. We're going to take it." And this year has been incredibly volatile for them, and they might not make the NCAA tournament. Number 1 guy, Wiseman, he leaves. But that's just, it's all over the place. And I mean, there was a point in time, I don't know what the statistic is this year, but as of 2 years ago, I think something like 47% of Division I players were applying for transfers, or at least exploring the opportunity of transferring. And it seems like kids these days, just societally, are never satisfied. And the balance of a team is just so tough. But to have not just 1 senior like Saeed Pridgett, but 3 seniors that are really embracing the moment and really embracing their time to go out on top together, prioritizing winning together, to have 3-star freshmen come in and buy into roles. It seems like it's completely atypical for college basketball. How proud does that make you?
Extremely, because when you look at the seniors, they have 3 different stories that are a lot to be proud of.
Great stories. I mean, what good stories, right?
You can make an argument for each one of them. Say, man, I want this more for him. I want this more for him. I want, he deserves this more because of this. And I mean, they have phenomenal stories about why they're here right now and how they got here. And to me, they're all success stories. you know, and so there's a lot of times where, as a staff, we're talking about these guys individually, and it's like, man, it'd be nice to finish this off for him. And, you know, I thought we had that with the group last year, too. I thought, you know, there were some guys that were so invested in this program that we had to win. And I don't know that I feel like we have to win a championship this year, but I know that where this group is headed right now and the way they're playing right now, it's been a fun ride, and probably I've been as emotional about this group as any.
When it comes to the championship, I mean, it's easy to remember 2 years ago, you had no business getting out of the semifinal, and you did.
It's the most ridiculous tournament I've ever watched.
But,
I mean, what the kid from even in those quarterfinals, the kid from North Dakota hit 8 3-pointers in the first half.
I mean, there's all of it. We know, you know, down at half in both championship games. Let's see, all that says the tournament is the tournament. It's a separate animal. But you went in with great expectations, I'm sure internally and certainly externally into those tournaments. Coming into this season, there wasn't nearly the expectations, but they have built. And I know that you want and thrive on a program that is the lead dog and that people are coming after, and it, once again, is that. It's Montana number one and everybody else after that. When you get to the tournament, I know it's a quarter of the season away still. Is that, for this team, a good thing to have that or not?
We have to own it, and they have no choice. And so that's why that comes up in recruiting, so that when you show up in Missoula, you know it's us against everybody. It just is what it is. And, you know, I think a lot of it's unconscious when you talk about the exterior, you know, the people that aren't a part of our program, but their approach to Big Sky basketball, Big Sky football is the same thing for Bobby. And you just have a group that looks at the tradition of Montana, and no one wants to be a part of helping Montana win. If Montana gets it done, they got to earn it, and that makes it more difficult.
The internal workings of an athletic department are fascinating to me. I think that there is a lot of symbiotic relationships that happen that maybe people don't acknowledge as much, but you mentioned Coach Auk. Having him back in the fold, having a guy that's kind of like-minded, it's his alma mater as well. He knows the dominance that Montana has experienced in football. Does that help you guys as a program?
Yeah, I think it's healthy to have another guy walking the halls that, you know, is won some championships. You know, when I first got here, it was Robin.
Absolutely.
And so when he retired, you know, I felt like, you know, I was assuming a leadership role in a very early stage of my career. So to have Bobby back has been healthy because now he's the leader, really. And so I get a chance to follow a little bit in some circumstances here and there and bounce some things off of a guy as decisions are made about external things. And that's been healthy for me and my program. So we definitely have welcomed him back with warm arms.
You got one game this week. It happens to be in Bozeman on Saturday night. It's always fun. This is a rivalry that in your tenure has gone your way almost all the time. When it comes to this game with 3 Montanans playing in it, for your team and multiples for them as well, just, again, I mean, I know you've answered this 100 times. How fun is just Cat Grizz environment, the whole setting of it?
It's big. It's the game, you know. The crowd is going to be packed. It'll be sold out, and it's going to be emotional for everyone on the floor. Having 3 guys from Montana in rotation makes it more fun, makes it more special, because that's difficult to do. It's just going to be difficult to continue to put that many Montana kids on the floor and play at the level that we're playing. And special things have to happen. One transfers back from the Pac-12. One leaves and comes back as, an NAIA All-American. And so to be able to put those guys on the floor and watch them enjoy the moment is huge. And I'd like to see Jared play a little more than he did last time.
No doubt. If he can, I'm sure he will. Travis, we appreciate you coming in as always, man. It's always fun to have you here. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
Travis DeCure, head coach of the Montana men's basketball team. Our ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls. Culture Paradise Falls, 3621 Brook Street, south end of Missoula. If you're headed north from the Bitterroot, if you're on the South Hill, great spot to sit down and enjoy breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 18 rotating beer tab handles, late happy hour, and all the games for college basketball season.
And we're getting down to it. 3 weeks left in the regular season. Conference tournaments will be here before you know it. So if you want to study up and get your bracket all prepared, head down to Paradise Falls. You can watch multiple games at once. They'll be the proud sponsors of our bracket challenge, which we will launch. We'll give you more information next week, and we'll launch it once the NCAA tournament bracket rolls out. But
we are doing the Tutel Nuanez Bracket Challenge, and it's going to be a blast this year. Some great prizes.
We got great prizes, including from Paradise Falls. So we'll give you more details on that next week. But you need to start studying up. You can't just do this, fill out the bracket and roll with it. Big Monday or Big Sky Conference Thursday.
That's right.
Head to Paradise Falls. You can watch all sorts of games at the same time. They got an early and a late happy hour, so that's great for the sports watching public. If you need a place to watch the Cats in Portland tonight or the Grizz in Bozeman on Saturday, Paradise Falls, 3621 Brook Street in Missoula, Missoula's coolest hotspot.
It's a new year, and that means basketball season is in full swing. From Big Monday to Super Tuesday to the Montana women's and men's basketball teams, Paradise Falls is your hoops headquarters. Paradise Falls has 30 TVs with ESPN3 and Pluto TV capabilities, meaning they can broadcast every single college basketball game you can think of. Paradise Falls also has 18 draft beers, including 6 rotating taps, plus a variety of delicious food. Paradise Falls open 7 a.m. till midnight, located at 3621 Brook Street in Missoula. When it comes to college hoops, any team, anywhere, you can watch in Paradise at Paradise Falls.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates. Bozeman, Montana is the center of the Treasure State Sports Universe this weekend. Friday night, Montana State will induct a star-studded class into the MSU Athletics Hall of Fame, including football legends Dane Fletcher and Bobby Daly. And Saturday, Montana State hosts the Grizzlies for the 301st matchup between old basketball rivals. Tutel and Nuanez will have a front row seat for it all. Come to Universal Athletic on Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. to join Tutel and Nuanez for a live broadcast from UA in Bozeman. Universal Athletic at 912 North 7th Avenue in Bozeman, proud supporters of athletics around the state of Montana.
Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6 is out now with Pat Kennedy. Pat Kennedy was the head coach of the University of Montana for 2 seasons in 03 and 04, in between Don Holst and Larry Krastowiak. He's the one head coach since Judd Heathcote who was outside the University of Montana coaching tree, and his short tenure as head coach at the UM was largely unsuccessful, going under 500 both seasons. That said, his tenure at the University of Montana also marked a turning point for the Grizzly program. What started with great optimism and eventually led to the program giving way to Larry Krastowiak and Pat Kennedy's personal story are also very intriguing. An assistant coach to the great Jim Valvano, and a head coach to a bevy of first-round NBA picks, including Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward at Florida State. Our conversation with Pat Kennedy is both illuminating and highly entertaining. So check out Grizz Greats, the Coaching Tree Podcast, Episode 6, out now wherever you get your podcasts. Grizz Greats is brought to us by Blackfoot Communications, Stockman's Bar, and Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. Basketball around the state of Montana and around the Big Sky Conference is heating up with March quickly approaching. And at the college level, another rendition of the Cat Grizz rivalry will play out in Bozeman Saturday afternoon and evening, but not before the Cats play against Portland State tonight. MSU, the men, are on the road. They are 8-6 in league play. They traveled to Portland to take on the Vikings, who beat them by 1 point in Bozeman last month. The MSU women are looking for their 10th win in a row. They're playing Portland State in Bozeman, but Portland State was last year's Big Sky Conference tournament champions.
At the high school level of hoops, district tournaments will kick off around the state this weekend, including several hosted in western Montana. The District 6B tournament for boys and girls will take place in Missoula and will be hosted by Loyola Sacred Heart. The District 13C boys and girls tournaments will take place at Frenchtown High School, and the District 14C tournament will be hosted by Ronan.
And finally, Montana bull rider Jess Lockwood continued his winning ways, helping lead Team USA Eagle to become the first team in the history of the PBR Global Cup to defend home soil. Lockwood rode 2 of the 4 bulls he was on for a total of 178 points to help the American squad earn $362,022 in Dallas, Texas over the weekend. Also, by the way, the Montana State men's game, 8 o'clock Mountain Standard Time opening tip. Just want to make sure people know, because you go to these West Coast games at 7 o'clock tip and you go, well, where's the game? Well, it's an hour later than the normal thing. So the 11 Sports Game of the Week on Portland State, Montana State tonight. Stu Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you across the state. Thanks for hanging out with us. You can check us out on YouTube. The Tutel Nuanez YouTube channel is there all the time. You can see, what we're wearing. I think that's the big thing that people are most interested in, the fashion icons that we've become. It is time now for our Mattress Firm Student of the Week, and we go to the phones. We welcome in Ella Stott from Choteau, Montana. She's a Choteau Bulldog, plays basketball there. Ella, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing great, Ella. Thanks so much for taking the time and being with us here. You're there in Choteau, Montana. Now, Ella, I got to ask you here, anytime for talking to Choteau, have you had Alpine Touch? They make it there in your hometown. The Alpine Touch, it's great, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, good.
Everybody loves it. It's impossible not to.
Now that we're on the same page there, let's get into some sports stuff. Now, you're a skier. You play some softball, but you're on the Choteau basketball team as well. Have you just been into athletics, into sports your whole life?
Yes.
What is your favorite sport? Do you have a favorite sport that you like to play?
Yeah, I like softball a lot.
What is it? So you said softball?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn my headphones up because, I got to make sure that I got the connection. What is it about softball, though, that you like? Because softball is a huge sport in the state of Montana. I mean, Montana loves softball. A lot of kids playing it, and you yourself. So what do you like about it?
Well, I like that it's a team sport. I don't like individual things because I get too nervous, but I like working with teams, and I'm a pitcher, and I personally absolutely love that. So that's my favorite position.
When you talk about the dynamic between basketball and skiing, how do you convince the basketball coaches to let you go skiing? They would never let me go skiing in high school.
Oh, I haven't gone skiing yet this year, during the basketball season, so.
Got to keep it safe, right?
Good cover.
Yeah.
Good cover. Coulter would have lied to us, too, if he was put in the situation you were put in. Hey, now, you also, though, you're doing stuff around the community with the younger kids, helping them, especially with some volleyball, right? You help out kids in the Choteau community there and teach and coach them. How'd you get involved in that?
Well, when we were younger, older kids always came into our practices and helped us, and I'm just kind of carrying out the tradition.
What do you like about helping out the younger kids? Is it fun for you to, get in there and kind of show them the ropes and get a kick out of it a little bit?
Oh, yeah, I like to be bossy sometimes, and it's fun because we're, skill-wise much better than them, so when we scrimmage, we get to do that, but we're also teaching them a lot, so having them playing against better competition is going to make them better in the long run.
Man, you sound like Michael Jordan. He wouldn't let his kids win at Candyland and all of that. You're just it's very competitive. But yes, they need to learn, right? They got to play the better competition. That's the deal. Ella Stott, our Mattress Firm Student of the Week from Choteau. What year are you there at Choteau, Ella?
I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore, so you got a couple years left. What is your favorite thing about being in Choteau in terms of being a Choteau Bulldog and playing sports there the next couple of years? You got a bunch of friends that you're on teams with and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we're a really close community because we're so small and everybody knows everybody, so.
Well, I'll tell you what, you certainly won the Planet Earth competition, because they're on the Rocky Mountain front. I mean, I just don't know if it gets much better than Choteau, Montana. I mean, it is spectacular there. So you're in a good situation all the way around. Ella, we appreciate you being here with us, being our Mattress Firm Student of the Week. Congratulations to you on that. And now you will be in the running to be the Mattress Firm Student of the Year. You know about that at the end of this whole thing?
Oh, no, I didn't hear about that.
Well, I got great news for you, okay? There's going to be a big vote at the end of this whole deal, and all the students of the week are going to be eligible to win a $3,000 scholarship from Mattress Firm for next year. So you are into that for being the student of the week, so congratulations to you, all right?
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Ella, for being with us. Appreciate it. I accepted her salutation like I'm the one providing the money. It's Mattress Firm that's doing it, not me. But certainly I'm happy to be the messenger. It's good to carry good news, you know.
Hey, good on Mattress Firm, good on Ella.
Absolutely. If you go to mattressfirmmt.com, by the way, you can nominate a student, a kid that you know, that you are aware of, that's doing great things in their community. They can be an athlete, but they don't have to be. Because we've had some speech and debaters, we've had some band folks, we've had a homeschooler in here throughout this series. So any kid that's out there doing good things, we want to highlight those kids. And as I mentioned, you'll be that individual will be featured on SWX and on a television news piece, and then the interview here, and you have an opportunity to get a $3,000 Mattress Firm scholarship, courtesy of Mattress Firm. So go check that out, mattressfirmmt.com. Quick break. One more opportunity at this thing. Is Stefan Diggs going to be a Minnesota Viking next year? Don't look at Instagram, Vikings fans. Don't look at it now. It's only going to depress you.
You hear the term small business all the time, but what does it mean? The answer is, it depends. Whether you're a one-woman show or employ over 100 people, at Farmers State Bank, your business is never small to us. Find the tools for success at any Farmers State Bank location, or check us out online at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, helping businesses succeed since 1907. Member FDIC.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
College basketball madness is happening again, and there's only one place in town to catch all the games, the Desperado. Catch every buzzer beater, every Cinderella story, and every upset on the Despo's 32 TVs, while getting your fill of the best hot wings Missoula has to offer, of course. Bracket busted? The Despo's got you covered there too, with cold drinks by the pint or pitcher. The Despo is your headquarters for NCAA basketball, NHL, and NASCAR too. The Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell, across from the Y.
Bozeman, Montana is the center of the Treasure State sports universe this weekend. Friday night, Montana State will induct a star-studded class into the MSU Athletics Hall of Fame, including football legends Dane Fletcher and Bobby Daly. And Saturday, Montana State hosts the Grizzlies for the 301st matchup between old basketball rivals. Tutel Nuanez will have a front row seat for it all. Come to Universal Athletic on Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. to join Tutel Nuanez for a live broadcast from UA in Bozeman. Universal Athletic at 912 North 7th Avenue in Bozeman, proud supporters of athletics around the state of Montana.
Bob Ward's Winter Clearance Progressive Sale is now at Final Markdown. Take an extra 40% off the lowest price on select merchandise. That's right, Bob Ward's Progressive Winter Clearance Sale is now at Final Markdowns of 40% off. You won't find better deals on select current season gear. Save an extra 40% off the lowest price now during the Progressive Sale at Bob Ward's Sports and Outdoors. Limited to stock on hand.
Parenthood is an adventure, but with Achieve Montana, Montana's 529 plan, saving for your child's college education is simple. Our investment options are designed for tax benefits now and college savings for the future, because you have other things to worry about right now, like enjoying every moment. Open a college savings account for as little as $25 at achievemontana.com. Visit achievemontana.com for a disclosure statement. Read and consider it carefully before investing. This message sponsored by Achieve Montana in cooperation with the Montana Broadcasters Association.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
There's a place off Ocean Avenue where I used to sit and talk with you. We were both 16 and it felt so right. Sleeping all day, staying up all night. Staying up all night. There's a place on the corner of Cherry Street. We would walk on the beach in our bare feet. We were both 18.
Stefan Diggs, is he going to be a Viking? Instagram seems to indicate
Stefan
it
Diggs.
may not. Yes, that's what I said. Stefan.
You said Stefan. It's Stefan.
Yeah, that's what I said.
You're wrong.
That's what I said. I didn't say anything. I just said that's what I said. It's Tutel Nuanez, 103, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Stefan Diggs. How's that? Tootle and Nunez on your radios. Happy to be with all of you across the state of Montana. SWX Montana Television as well. We're also available on YouTube. You can check us out, 1029ESPN.com. If you'd like to listen to the stream, you can listen to it there. It is there all the time. It is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to pick up your phone and call, you can do that as well. 329-1899, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Raggage Brothers RV phone line. The podcast is also always available. You can go listen to the Tutel and Nuanez podcast, our conversation with Meg Harrington and Robin Selvig from yesterday. I listened to again today. I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed our conversation with them. That is up there, as well as everything else that we do around here. It is on all of your podcasting platforms. You can go listen to it. It's there thanks to Blackfoot Communications and the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. All right, Coulter, we got a potpourri of items to go through here, but I want to start with Stefan Diggs, who has evidently removed any photo of him in anything Vikings related from Instagram. Now, that feels pretty ominous to me from the guy. I love Stefan Diggs. I think he's a great wide receiver. I think he's a better wide receiver than Adam Thielen. That's my personal opinion. Adam Thielen has been more productive, not arguing that. I'm just saying in terms of the skill sets, I think Diggs has it. He also has been responsible for some drama on the Minnesota Vikings, but also perhaps some change, because when he finally started to get sideways in terms of, what he was saying and getting upset and so forth and so on, is when Captain Kirk turned the thing on and had one of the I know you hate Kirk Cousins. That's fine. He had like a 4 to 6 game stretch this season that was better than everybody else in the league during the time that he was ripping it.
He had the highest quarterback rating for a single month in the history of the NFL.
I mean, it's crazy. And
but that also is a flawed stat. Because
it is.
It has to do with, they were running the ball.
It's a flawed stat, no question. It's still pretty remarkable. Ever? That's pretty remarkable. So all I'm saying is we can put all that aside. Is Stefan Diggs walking out? Is he done with the Minnesota Vikings? And if so, how big a problem is that?
Don't care whatsoever. When's the last time a receiver led a team to the Super Bowl? Was the pivotal member of a team that won a Super Bowl?
Well, the closest you're going to come is Jerry Rice.
Absolutely. Who else? None. Never. It doesn't matter. And if he's going to be a headache like he was last year.
But here's my
the bigger news today with the Vikings that Everson Griffin is opting out. That's a way bigger deal.
Everybody's opting out.
This is going to erode exactly as I expected it to, and that's just what it is.
Okay.
I think the Vikings window maybe still is one more year, but that's it. They had their window, and I don't think they're going to get. If it's not next year, it's never. Or I shouldn't say never. It's never with this group.
Right. Let me ask you this.
Because Linval Joseph's going to be up. Xavier Rhodes is going to be up. Harrison
Rhodes is done.
Exactly. 30 in the NFL, that's it. I mean, Everson Griffin's now 31. Xavier Rhodes is 30. Linval Joseph's 31. You can't keep everybody, and at some point you have to cut your losses.
I mean, here's the thing, though, is that nobody knew who Linval Joseph was until they did. And the thing that is the key to this thing, I mean, when you talk about windows, is who are you reloading with?
Totally.
And also,
and they've been great. I mean, we talk about the Seahawks player development.
Mm-hmm.
The Vikings have been exceptional at player development on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, on defense, exactly. All right, how about this? Cam Newton, free agent, not coming back to Carolina. Where do you think he goes?
Here's my opinion on all this stuff. I was thinking about this the other day. Forever and ever and ever, if a player had an announcement to make, usually that player had a member of the media that he trusted in his back pocket that he would then go to, that would be the trusted revealer of that information.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the revealer of the information is the player via the social media. I thought about this when Drew Brees announced that he was coming back. It used to be that Drew Brees might have his favorite reporter or columnist from the New Orleans paper or whoever it might be, or his favorite TV guy or radio guy, whatever. And he would say, hey, let me come on your show and we're going to talk about something big tomorrow. And he would say it there. Now they can do it themselves. Pluses and minuses, certainly. Because players have such a huge platform that cannot really be regulated in any way, as soon as you become a head case or an arrogant sort of distraction, I just feel like because the chemistry of a locker room is so delicate, no matter how talented you are, so a lot of times it's good riddance. So if Stephon Diggs leaves Minnesota, I think he's replaceable even if his talent isn't. Just like if Cam Newton leaves, I think he's replaceable even if his talent isn't. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think the market for Cam Newton is? I've heard some rumors that John Gruden is completely done with Derek Carr, with the Raiders, and he's going to be on the hunt. And that his top two guys are Phillip Rivers and Cam Newton. What do you think of that?
I would buy the first part, but I don't know about. I mean, why Phillip Rivers? I mean, Phillip Rivers is not better than Derek Carr. Period. Tom Brady is, and that rumor's been swirling for a long time with the Raiders specifically.
Right.
Who knows? Who knows about that? I think that Cam Newton is going to have his pick of the litter. I mean, you know, obviously within reason, but I think any team who is in need of a quarterback or believes that they're in need of a quarterback would be interested in Cam Newton, and I think several of them are prepared to write checks to get Cam Newton in there. For, you know, I don't think these are going to be 6-8-year deals.
Sure.
But a 3-year, right? How old is Cam Newton?
Not 30.
David, how old is Cam Newton? You tell us here in just a moment. But I mean, he's coming off this
Cam Newton
injury.
is going to be 31 on May 11th.
Wow, he is 30.
So he's 30.
Interesting.
And normally you would say as a quarterback, that's not that big a deal. But he's not just a quarterback. He's Cam Newton. He's taken more big shots than anybody at that position since he came into the league. So it's a lot of wear on that 30-year-old body, as we saw where he didn't even play this past season or played a couple of games, and that was it. My point is that he's still unbelievably talented. He's still got all the physical, attributes to do it.
Certainly.
And so he is absolutely not just a viable, but a very strong to good quarterback for the next couple of seasons, and teams would kill for that.
I agree. To me, because of the enigma that he is and how emotional he operates, we've talked about this on the show multiple times. When Cam Newton is settled and satisfied, he's one of the great talents in the NFL. I mean, he won the MVP and led Carolina to the doorstep of the Super Bowl. But that's why I just wonder, you're right, he's going to have a lot of suitors.
Mm-hmm.
What's the right fit, though?
Well, I don't know what the right fit is, but I guess my point is...
if you went to a place like Pittsburgh, it's a good fit.
Right.
If you went to a place like...
Miami?
Or the Raiders, before the Raiders go to Vegas? I mean, I don't know. Would you really want Cam Newton in Vegas or Cam Newton in Miami? It just seems like he's a guy that doesn't really have he doesn't manage distractions very well. And when he doesn't, he becomes one of the ultimate distractions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to chalk it up to distractions. I would chalk it up to emotion, though. I mean, to me, this is all about the field. Like, you can see how the game is going on Cam Newton's face every single time, and that's not ideal. So,
and also, he is just a distraction to your franchise no matter what, but it can be a great marketing tool and a great positive when you're winning and a great negative when you're not. I mean, he shows up into the press conferences. His hat is a storyline every week.
But who cares?
Well, but all I'm saying you don't have to care when you're winning because it's great.
But you don't have to care when you're losing what hat he's wearing. Like, nobody. I just don't. That's the stuff I don't buy at all. Zero.
So why do his teams implode so much when it's not going well?
Because when he's over there sulking on the sidelines and he's got his head in a towel. And he's clearly upset and all that. That's the stuff that is real. That's the storyline. Not what did he wear to the press conference.
I'm not saying it's the storyline. I'm just saying it gives him a bigger spotlight than a lot of other losing quarterbacks.
I mean, he's got a huge spotlight on him. He's a gregarious, outgoing, engaging guy, and he brings the focus on himself for better or worse.
Exactly.
So
that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to really the hats are just symbolic.
I mean, okay. I buy it as a symbol. Here's what
I just think that Cam Newton could have a really good renaissance or not. It's very broad what he could be.
I agree with that. All I'm saying is he's going to have his options. It's not like he's just going to have to wait for the phone to ring. He's going to get to pick. That's my opinion. Because I think there's going to be multiples out there for him. Boys and girls, happy Thursday to you. Coulter and Bozeman tomorrow at Universal Athletic. Me right here, and all of us with you. We'll see you then.
Seafood lovers, it's time.